Today you will hear from Curtis Lewsey, the founder of AM Cards and the author of Appreciation Marketing. Curtis is one of the most genuine entrepreneurs that I know and is always asking, how can I help you? My biggest takeaway from the conversation with Curtis was when he said, get to know someone for who they are, not what they do. I know you will enjoy the conversation with Curtis, so let's start the ascent. Hello, everyone. We are excited that you are here today at our Success Ascent podcast, and I am extremely grateful for the opportunity to introduce to you someone that I've watched grow, I've had the opportunity to learn from, the opportunity to work with over a number of years, and his name is Curtis Lewsey. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Curtis before he does a little bit of intro on his own. Curtis has written a book called Appreciation Marketing. I just happen to have a copy here today with me. And man, when I listened to that and first read it, and I actually listened to it when I first met Curtis because he gave me the audio of it and then read the book, there's just so many ideas there and so many opportunities, no matter what business you're in, as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, a small business owner, even running a sales team, there's so much to learn. And on our podcast, our goal is to pull out from people their journey so that no matter who's listening to our podcast, that they can learn from this and they can take ideas away and nuggets and really help themselves on this success journey. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce Curtis to you and let him tell you a little bit about his story. So first of all, welcome, Curtis.
Thank you so much. And before we get started, I just want to thank you personally for not only being a friend, but a mentor, and your wisdom, being in your rooms all over the country as you're training, seeing you transform lives. You transformed mine, and I want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really do appreciate it.
And I would love to share my backstory. So let me tell you about quickly my first job right out of college. I got a job at Cintas Corporation, the uniform people. And I was up in Connecticut, and I had the awesome opportunity to sell really sexy products like toilet paper and air fresheners and soaps. And I was knocking on every door, every store, and every floor up in New Haven, Connecticut, up and down the 84 corridor. And, about 3 months in, I hit a wall. I was about ready to quit, and I was frustrated. I didn't think sales was really for me. And that's when the number one sales guy that was there, his name was Sean, and he pulled me aside and says, let's go out to lunch. And he goes, and so I went out to lunch with him, and he says, Curtis, I see you're working really hard. He goes, what do you think you're missing? I said, I don't know. I said, I don't think this is right for me. He goes, well, let me ask you a question. And I said, yeah. And he goes, who are the drivers in your territory? And I named the drivers, and I said, one is Gary. He's like, tell me about Gary. I go, well, Gary services the accounts I sell. Duh. Like, I sell them, he services them. He goes, no. He goes, did you know that Gary's married? He has a father. He's a father of 3. He likes to go fishing on the weekends, currently training for a sprint triathlon. And I said, no. And he goes, you probably also don't know that he sends me all of his referrals from your territory. And I said, what? And I was really about ready to pop off. And I go, what do you mean? And that's when it hit me. And he's like, Curtis, you have to get to know people for who they are, not just what they do. And he goes, when you do that, you can start earning referrals. And I started realizing is you get a lead by what you do. You earn referrals by who you are and how you show up in people's lives. And so I shifted my focus because I was only as good as my last sale. I was on to the next, looking at people as dollar signs and decimal points. However, when I started getting the drivers and hopping on their trucks and getting to know them as actual people that have lives outside of work, I got to educate them on what I was looking for. Like when it says under new management or coming soon, getting that lead and turning it in, like first one in the door usually closes the business. So I went from about quitting to the next month being the number one sales rep in the entire country out of 1,250 reps. And I was blown away. But then I went back to Sean and I was like, because he was the guy that was like going to the Fairfield Beach with his niece and nephew on a Wednesday afternoon and golfing on a Friday, cutting out of work. Because what I realized is that when you hit your numbers, the manager is like, you're your best friends and like they let you do what you want to do. And like, so anyway, he worked half the amount of hours and he made twice as much money as us. And so that was a huge epiphany early on when I was 22, 23 years old, was the importance of getting to know people for who they are, not just what they do.
So Curtis, I actually wrote that down. So when you say who they are, how do you get to know who they are? I mean, what's your strategy for doing that? Because obviously what I've learned from you and the appreciation marketing and what you're doing with your AM cards product and all the opportunities we have to talk, it really is a sincere conversation. So share with our listeners, like, what's your strategy for that?
Well, I'll tell you, I asking the right questions. And, and one of the things that I asked when I was on the truck, I was like, hey, tell me about you. What's your story? And like, just letting people open up and sharing what they want to share. Oh, where'd you grow up? What led you into this job? And, and then one of my favorite questions to ask is, what makes you feel the most alive? Like, what do you like to do outside of work? And what you realize is that what they're doing may be a passion. Like these guys servicing these accounts, I could tell from most of them that wasn't a passion for them. It was kind of more like a stop into where they're going, or other people did look at it as a career. But what I realized in other professions, no matter whether it's somebody owns their own business or what they're doing could potentially be their passion. However, it's not their purpose. And so what is it that's bigger than them that they feel pulled to do or help? And then when you find those triggers in somebody, like everything changes. And then you can kind of like, stay in touch in a different way.
Well, and what happens, people light up when they start talking about what their purpose is and what their passion is. Their energy goes up, their excitement goes up, their enthusiasm goes up, and then it really becomes about them. And so one of the things, Curtis, that I've loved about our relationship is watching your journey. So let's talk about that journey, because people see when people get successful and when they achieve a certain level of success, and yet they don't understand what it took to get through that. In other words, what were the ceilings you had to break through? What were the journeys? So take us from that when you talked about in the beginning there. Take us then just on a little bit of a journey, like the ceilings you broke through since then.
That's great. And if you recognize something, call it out. That's a great question. So when I was at Cintas Corporation, one of the things I realized is that one of the biggest competitive advantages in all of business is saying thank you. And when you show appreciation and gratitude, it seems so common sense. It's not common practice in the marketplace for people to do it. And so when you do it in a way that makes you stand out from the competition, like there's things that you do, like we talk in the book, that's the expected thank you. When you go above and beyond and you do the unexpected, or you do something that really wows somebody, and I have tons of things we can share and talk about that eventually. But when I did that, then it was like everything started opening up. Like, I'll give you an example. Like when I was at Cintas, I signed up for a greeting card service called Send Out Cards. It was a multi-level network marketing company. I'm no longer with them. I have obviously my own. However, what I did was I took a picture of this grocery store and I uploaded it on the front of the card. It was called Seatown Grocery in New Haven, Connecticut. Backstreet was a chain of like 4 or 5 restaurants. And I sent it to the guy I met with. Now, he was interviewing other companies. And when he called me, he's like, come on back in, Curtis. And he goes, you guys aren't the cheapest. I believe in you and I like you. And he signed. And I was like, that was like a huge thing for me, because I didn't think we were going to win it. Because when there's that many floor mats and you multiply the difference, it was like pretty substantial. And so I earned that account. I didn't get it. I earned it. And I'm looking back and I was like, I earned that. And so that was a huge eye opener for me. And then I realized other business people weren't doing this around the country. So I went on to build an organization. And in that company, I left at 23 years young. I quit my job. And for 10 years, I didn't have a job. And so I'm going to take you back to a week after I graduated college. My brother Silas was killed in a freak dirt bike accident.
Oh my God.
Okay. And so I went to work 1 week after, in my first job at Cintas, 1 week after my brother passed away. And I couldn't get out of my head what my dad said at my brother's funeral. And he said that Silas lived more life in his 23 years than most do in a normal lifetime. And most people have heard of variation. That was the first time that I've ever heard of something like that, that kind of quote. And so when I went to work at Cintas, I went there with a different attitude. And there you either move up or you move out. And I knew that moving up meant more responsibilities and not necessarily more money. So I was like, so I ended up moving out after 2 years, got in, and I built an organization of 10,000 plus customers and distributors. It was good run and everything. And then I realized one thing, that when I left, I thought I was going to protect my income. And then I realized that, if you don't build something that you own, sometimes you're wasting your time. And like, in real estate or in other businesses, your database is something that you own, that's yours, that you take care of and you nurture. Well, and there, my database wasn't actually mine. And I realized that, and a little bit later on. So I started my own. A couple years later, a very good friend of mine that Aladdin, put up some money and hired a programmer, started the code. And I didn't want something that wasn't MLM, something that, and I called AM card, AM for appreciation marketing. And it was great. I got started. One of the fastest ways to get in front of a lot of people is real estate, because they come together often, most companies anyway. And so I started that. I built up the company enough to pay for my own bills. I'm sorry, the company bills, just not my own bills. And with a wife, a soon-to-be wife, a baby on the way, made a decision that I was going to go get a job. So I got a job. While this was a hobby, put it on the side as a hobby, I took a really cool job in real estate marketing company with a business tycoon in the area here in Central Florida. And I learned a lot through osmosis from him. I learned a lot of good things, and I took some of those strategies and tips and tricks that I've seen him grow a company that was, $60-70 million a year company and I worked pretty side by side with him and learned a lot. And I took some of those strategies back to my own business and was able to help explode, so much so that here I am sitting in a brand new office. We just tripled our office space, and maybe towards the end, I'll walk you to the other side and show you the production room.
I love it. I love it. Well, Curtis, you said, and we'll talk a little bit about AM cards in just a second. And you talked about that journey. And one of the things, what were some of your setbacks that you're most proud of succeeding through? Because obviously we all have setbacks, and we have to break through that setback, if you may. So is there one setback that you can recall that just you really weren't sure you were going to get through, and now obviously you have, and what it took to get through it?
Yeah, what I realized is that don't try to get through something alone. Like, make your own gut decisions that you feel is right for you and your family. But in the same respect, there's so much wisdom of people that have traveled paths before you. And so we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on code. We built this thing up. It was awesome. I just couldn't figure out how to go get a customer reasonably, and to make it all work. And so when I took a job, it felt like it was a huge setback. For 10 years, I didn't have a job, and I didn't want a job. And yet at the same time, there's something that I feel like when you kind of surrender in a way, and you just kind of let faith kind of open up, and you're open to different possibilities and not so closed-minded, the job was so perfect for me. So perfect that I learned so much. I took it because I knew it was going to be a giant step forward for me down the road. So in the beginning, it was a little step back. It helped me it's like a slingshot. You pull it back and then you let it go. And that's what ended up happening for me. And I think that it was just evaluating and listening to people that have been there before you, what they've done to kind of get out of the turmoil, the mess. And I actually went through a mastermind course that Aladdin runs, and it was based off of the book Think and Grow Rich. And when it got to the point on decision, I was like, before I give up on this, I better see if I can really make it work. And I had I was going to raise 250 grand for 25% of a company that I was going to raise. It was an air and water purification company. And I had everything set up, a business proposal. I flew to Scottsdale to meet up with this guy. And then before I went there, I decided not even to open up the book. And I was like, I got to go back, and I really have to give this a legit shot before I turn this chapter and chalk it up as a hobby. And thank God that I got to that point of Think and Grow Rich, that it was make a decision. I made the decision, made a couple of phone calls, and the rest is history. Well, and that was just 18 months ago.
Yeah. And we're grateful because you're obviously impacting lives at a pretty high level. So I want to come back to something you said. You referenced mentors, and how important have mentors, coaches, consultants been to you in your journey?
Big time. I mean, and not all of them I talk to. I read and listen to their wisdom in books, and like many of them I've never met. I reference them as my mentors, and then other people that I can pick up the phone and I can actually call and have conversations with. And I think it's also important to get the mentors in different areas of your life as well. And like there's not just one mentor that is the best at a certain part of your life, whether it's business or health or relationships or whatnot.
So let's kind of dial forward here and talk about AM cards, and what I'll share my perspective on the product in the program and the company, because I'm actually, full disclosure, a customer. And I'm a customer because one of the things that struck me is that in our world of chaos and moving fast and social media and all of that, we just don't actually communicate with people in a way sometimes that impacts them. And true story is I sent out a group of cards here to some folks that I care about. I wanted to acknowledge, I wanted to say thank you. And it's amazing how many of them that have gotten the cards have picked up the phone and called me, and we've had a great conversation. And so, that company that you have and the opportunity from an entrepreneur perspective touches so many different things. So let's start with, first of all, talk about what AM Cards is, the vision, the purpose, like your passion for that company, and then what the product is.
I tell you, the biggest thing about AM cards and what I talk about the most is the impact of that single card, the single card that you put your heart and soul into it. One of my best friends and actually an investor in my company, he sells private jets for a living, and he concierge services and everything. And he said something to me that really struck a chord. And he's like, Curtis, I work with people that have assistants for their executive assistants. I mean, they're billionaires worth hundreds of millions of dollars, the who's who of the Forbes list. Like, they're in my phone as cell phone. They can call me, And he's like, and he's so humble. He owns a farm. He rescues horses. And, he's the kind of guy, he actually just did a 30-day little challenge. He challenged himself to send 6 cards every single day before he go individual, heartfelt, individual cards. And he was just kind of doing this. And he says, Curtis, oh my gosh, the impact that is happening. And it's because I'm going through all this, because at the time of this recording, we're going through the COVID, all this, pandemic stuff. And he's like, wow, to slow down and to connect with somebody like this, my phone is ringing off the hook, text messages. And it's just it makes me feel really good. And so he goes, one thing that you never want to do. And he goes, Curtis, I hope you can share this on stages and broadcasts, is don't make sure people are not outsourcing their own heart. He goes, you can have an assistant do a lot of things. Don't have them call your best friend and wish him a happy birthday. You do that. And he's like, so when you send a card and it's just kind of like, and you're doing something on that, so you just make sure that that it's coming from you and it's coming from a place of just your own heart, and you're opening up. And I said, and it's just so amazing. I'll give you a quick story about him. His son, several years ago, was getting on a school bus, and he sees the same school bus driver over and over, always pleasant, always happy. And he decided to send a greeting card to the bus driver to the school. And the guy gets the card. And the next day after he got off the bus, walked over and saw Chris, shook his hand with tears in his eyes and said, thank you for the card. I've never been thanked. And now this is somebody that takes care of the most prized possession of his entire life, his son, and he has a daughter as well. He's like, she was out of school. It's like, his job means more to me than the billionaire I'm about ready to sell a jet to. And he goes, so the same week, I get that emotional handshake with a tear in his eye, and I also get a call from a billionaire. And did it feel pretty cool getting a call from a billionaire to say, thank you for the card? I've been getting greeting cards for you for 7 years. And I only get 2 cards in the mail, I want to tell you, Chris. And the other one's my aunt, who just passed away within the last year. So you're the only one that shows up in my mailbox, and I want to say thank you. And like, when he tells me this, I was just I had the chills, and I was like, we are doing something really special here with AM cards. So when you sometimes you really need to slow down in order to speed up. And so when you slow down a little bit, when you're sending these cards without expectation of getting something in return, which is really the root of what appreciation marketing is, the universe, God, whatever you believe in, higher power, I believe just showers back love and like it just, everything magnifies, right? And so that is the essence of like what we're doing here is, reaching out in kindness. And when you're doing that and you're sending that card, like with what Chris and sending, it's just, there's something about it that's pretty magical.
Well, and you mentioned in the times that we're in with COVID and all the other things that, from a society perspective that, there's just a lot of things happening right now, a lot of anxiety for a lot of people. And, we live in a world with social media where, people post a lot of things, and your product simply allows people to take something, just as an example, that somebody was proud of. Maybe it was a gathering for their daughter's or son's birthday, and take that moment that they post, capture it, and put it on a card, and do that personal note. And as you were talking about that, it reminds me, I have 3 kids, and you just before we started here, interacted with my daughter, and in a file at home, I have every card, every drawing, anything that was ever given to me by my kids. And I'm 55 years old and I have 3 kids. It's a pretty big file. And, and they'll say to me, they'll give me a hard time sometimes. I go, Dad, why do you keep those? And I go, because they mean something. And when you just said that, I went, that's why I've done it. And so that's why I love the product so much. And it's not just about the product. What I love, Curtis, too, is, and I wrote this down, you said, and it'd be something for everybody to write down, don't outsource your heart. I love that statement, because it does come from the heart and starts from the heart. And the people that you have relationships with and the people that truly care about you, that heart's always going to be there no matter what's going on in their life or what's going on in your life.
I have a financial advisor that I played baseball with in high school or in college. And then I was with Northwestern Mutual, and I had life insurance policy back in the day. I still have it now, but however, I was getting greeting card, birthday cards, which was nice to get one in the mail. Wasn't his handwriting, 100% wasn't his handwriting, wasn't signed by him. And it just felt so disingenuous, and like it actually has an adverse effect on me. I'd rather get nothing, honestly. And so, and then I met somebody here in Orlando that went out of his way to ask me about my business, to like find out what my goals and my dreams were. I moved all my accounts, and now I'm getting all kinds. It's like, that's just a short little story. See, these cards, and one of the things is that when you're sending out and you're doing this kind of stuff, it resonates with a certain percentage of people, right? And I get it. Everybody has a different type of personality. However, also when you send cards out, even if it's just a simple like happy home anniversary card, I can't believe it's already been 1 year or 2 years or something like that, keeping it more, it's nice, it's personal when they get the card. But what ends up happening is these cards, they lead to conversations, and conversations lead to opportunities, and opportunities lead to closed business. Because the more conversations you can have around your business is the better. And so you're not asking for it. Like what we say is, don't just ask for the referral, deserve it. Show up in their life. Now there's a time and a place to absolutely ask for the referral. And that's another, training or another talk for another day. However, that's something that we talk about a lot.
Well, you said something was funny. People have different personalities. I know every breathing human being has a heart, and when that card touches it, you just bring a smile to people's face. So, one of the things that I've always loved about you and our relationship and watching you grow is the systems. And many people who will be listening to this or watching it will be leading sales organizations. They'll be, maybe they're the sales person who's doing the sales. And what I want to acknowledge about you and just bring up is you've always had a process. And I've always loved that, where no matter who from your organization showed up and was involved in something I was doing, it was literally the process. And we might say a script, and yet it really wasn't a script. It was a conversation. And it was so much fun over the years, because I feel like, although I couldn't, never did it, that I could have got up and done the conversation because of the process. And I think a lot of times business owners, entrepreneurs, whoever might be listening, they forget that the process is so important. So what would be your thoughts on talking and speaking to that?
Well, I learned something early on, and when you find something that works, and it works really well, stick with it, and also figure out that little 2 millimeters that Tony Robbins talks about, right? Like the little 2 millimeters that you can do that can make a bigger difference. And actually what's happened is being in rooms with other amazing trainers and speakers and coaches, we ask for feedback, and because we ask you, and then to the point where now you feel comfortable even giving unsolicited feedback, because it's going to be received well, even if it's critical. And so that's obviously how we grow. I remember being in one of your rooms outside of, I think it was Atlanta, and you were doing like a little intervention with somebody, and it got kind of heated. And I was like, wow, you stood your ground. We was training for everybody else in the room, including myself. And I was like, that was good. And so I think that's a whole big thing. Being coachable and being committed is two important characteristics in order to break a ceiling to get to the next level. Being committed is one thing. However, being coachable, and being coachable is great, but who you get advice from is super important. And at the end of the day, you got to also listen to your gut and what feels right inside of you.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Oh my gosh, I might have to take a second to think about that. You know what? Here it is. So, you know who William E. Bailey is by chance?
I do not.
William E. Bailey was Jim Rohn's mentor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
One of his mentors, right? And then, as we all know, that Tony Robbins sold for Jim Rohn, right? Early in the day. So Tony Robbins has a big influence with Jim Rohn. Passed away several years ago. So William E. Bailey said something on a tape called Lost Tapes of a Legend. And Jerry the Rhino Clark did an interview with him way back a while ago. And somehow, some way, I got a hold of it. And William E. Bailey said something that I'll never forget. And he says, just start with the truth, because you're going to end with it.
Wow. Say that again.
You're going to start with the truth, because you're going to end with it. And so, this has rang true so loud and clear as I get older, a little bit, as I've had a few years under my belt. I'm 37 right now. I know I'm still young. However, I've been working since I was 14 years old. When I was 14, I was picking vegetables, driving my bike 3 hours or 20 minutes 30 minutes in the morning, 3 miles to get there to pick vegetables. At 15, I was running a crew, and I did that because I wanted to play baseball. Baseball was my passion, and I wanted to do anything I could to play baseball, and I got invited to play on a traveling team all around the country. And it was 45 minutes to an hour away for every practice and every game, and I couldn't miss that opportunity. So I was willing to do anything possible. And with a single parent, both of my parents were a big part of my life growing up. However, all 4 of us kids lived with my dad, and on a single parent income. And we always had food on the table. But we also came from a strong work ethic. So, and as I get older and as I see things transpire, it's something might not make sense right away with a situation.
Right.
I think the biggest thing is don't judge it for what it is. The truth is always exposed at some point, somewhere, some shape or how. So if you kind of internalize it and start with the truth, because you're going to end with it, it's kind of a good life lesson, personally and in business.
It's a great parenting lesson too. What great advice to share. One of the things that I've learned is in raising kids, and people go, well, this is a success podcast. No, success is across the board. Raising kids is a journey, and having success in that is really important. And I've watched the things that I've learned over my life and my mentors and my coaches and how that's applied to raising kids. And that's just a great statement for kids. What's the worst advice you've ever gotten?
Wow, I wish I thought about this before I got on. Some of the worst advice that I ever gotten.
See, what I love about this right now as you're thinking, so I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think, is one of the things that mentors and coaches and consultants do is they ask great questions, and then what sometimes they don't do is stop and let people think about it, and they give them the answers. And when you ask somebody a question and it forces them to think, that's a great question.
It really is. And in one of my thoughts, like my mind has been so conditioned over the years that like, even if there was a bad situation that's happened, I look at it as a learning experience. So I don't look at it as, you did this wrong. It's like you found a way not to do it, how not to do it. Or, and I think that maybe one of the worst pieces of advice, maybe we'll write it up and, or I'll send you a clip. You can add it to the end of this. I don't really have something that pops into my head right away.
Well, and you know what, Curtis, that makes sense, because if you took at something that happened to you and you don't look at it as a negative and you look at it from what you learned, the way your brain is processing that right now is it wasn't bad advice. It was just an opportunity to learn, which I think is awesome. I always want to ask my guests, what's a great book you're reading right now?
What's a great book that I'm reading right now? Well, I actually have a few books that are open. One of them is actually by Jay Abraham that actually just came out, and I'm going to open up to tell you the exact title. It's called The Sticking Point: 9 Ways to Move Your Business from Stagnation to Stunning Growth in Tough Economic Times. And Jay Abraham is on the record for helping like, I don't know, $8 or $10 billion in sales. Like the guy is like the who's who of like a marketing expert. So really good stuff that I'm listening to. And then also because I have certain different niches and quite frankly, one of the things I just started talking to my wife recently is I was like, I want to start understanding a little bit more, because everything that seems to like be written about has obviously like spin of something before, or they have a different way of talking about it. And it really kind of, I don't get religious here, but like derives from the Bible. And like, I'm like kind of interested in actually reading some of the books and understanding that within the Bible. And I was talking to my wife about that the other day, and it's like, that's actually the next book I'm going to get. I said, I have one, but in my move, I didn't even bring it with me. So I feel ashamed about that. And then the other ones is actually online marketing and advertising and stuff. Is like how to position and put things out in front and like create like sales funnels and stuff. So I'm studying Russell Brunson's work from ClickFunnels.
Yeah, and Russell Brunson, for those of you that don't know, is amazing online marketing and funnel creation and really the online strategies. It's fascinating how much of online education, growth, training, where that market is going. Expert knowledge market is just fascinating. So as we're coming to the end here, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to share, how would people get in touch with you, take advantage of, AM cards and the products that you all have. Is there one final thought before we do that you would share?
One final thought. Well, yeah, you know what? I just challenge everybody on here. If you listened this far and you got to the end, take a little 30-day challenge. You could start with a couple of days in a row. You just try to do it for 30 days. And what I recommend is that you either go to Walmart, Walgreens, or you can test out AM cards, if you will. It doesn't matter to me. Either way is what I'd like you to do is just pick one person a day and send a card to them and tell them, what you appreciate about them, what you love about them or whatever. And in a way of more like who they are as a person, not just what they do or do for you, but more who they are. And I'll tell you, what I would recommend that you do is that you actually do it and plan it out. And so when you plan it out, you might actually sit down on a Monday and write 5 or 7 of them and be done for the week. If you're like me, that's what you're probably going to end up doing. And you're laser focused, and once you get in the groove, you do it. Instead of doing maybe one a day, do like 5 or 7 on a Monday morning. And then I would like to couple it with one other thing, and that is do something social each and every single day. And what I mean by that is go on LinkedIn or go on Facebook or Google reviews and write a positive review about somebody or their business, unsolicited, or a recommendation on LinkedIn. And the reason is because you can send them a greeting card and it impacts them. You do something like that, it's going to impact them, and it could potentially, when the right person reads that review, could potentially help them earn business and other people. It's more public. And like when I started doing more of that, it was really cool. I find myself for a long period of time is only writing reviews if they're negative. And like, oh, I'm going to show them or something like that. And then I realized you need to mix it up a little bit, because if you go click on Amazon and you see, oh, this guy only has bad reviews. He doesn't mix it. He does like, can I really trust somebody like
Poor
that?
guy.
Poor guy, yeah.
I love it. Well, that's great advice. And I know you've been very humble, and yet you've taken your time. So how would people get in touch with you if they were interested in AM Cards?
You could just go to amcards.com. Actually, we offer everybody the opportunity to sign up for free. And you can send your first card anywhere in the United States for free. We pay for the stamp, we pay for the card, just to test it out. We try to make the least barrier to entry as possible. And we also, in the process, it's not launched right now. Hopefully, maybe by the time that you're watching this, referralsecrets.com is going to be a podcast as well. Also, referralsecrets.com is going to be a free download where we're going to share a bunch of different referral secrets that you can implement into your business to start seeing it's really for referrals, retention, and recruiting. So, these principles are across the board: repeat business, referrals, retention, recruiting, the 4 R's.
Well, and what a great time to be launching that with the opportunities we have with, the unemployment and people, deciding what they're going to do with their next part of their lives, if you may. And I'll just offer this again. You were very humble, and yet what I know about AM Cards is there's no long-term commitments, which is really kind of nice. And, sometimes we get so busy that, we maybe don't send the cards out that we have a desire to, and yet we don't lose that opportunity. It's always there, if you may, as part of our membership. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on our Success Ascent podcast and sharing your journey and your wisdom. And I took a page of notes, and that's what I love about doing these podcasts and having conversations, because you learn from others, and the saying is others have gone before you, and you are certainly a great example of an entrepreneur, a great human being, by the way. And so we were just truly blessed to have you today, and I just want to thank you for sharing everything that you did.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Take care. Thanks so much for stopping by the Success Ascent podcast today. I trust that we delivered on our commitment to you to provide a significant return on investment of your time. Curtis Lewsey, the founder of AM Cards and the author of Appreciation Marketing, certainly delivered. I know personally I took a whole page of notes, and I trust you did as well. We're also very excited about our upcoming guest. Please tune in to hear from Mr. Scott Maloof. He is the founder, president, owner of Scott Maloof International. Scott started his business just over 4.5 years ago, and he's already succeeded $2 million in gross revenue, and he's provided opportunities for nearly 30 other individuals in his organization. You're not going to want to miss that session. If you've not yet subscribed, please go to your favorite podcast source and subscribe to the Success Ascent, or simply go to www.thesuccessascent, and that's ASCENT.com, thesuccessascent.com. Thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to catching you on the next Ascent.